I'll gladly do that, Representative Johnson. I thank you for the opportunity to testify. Ranking Member Smith, members of the committee. Sadly, the foreclosure crisis remains unabated in my home state of Rhode Island and many other parts of the country. And I appreciate that you have convened this hearing in the final days of the 111th Congress to inquire into this issue.
And Senator, would you pull that microphone up just a little closer? Thank you.
And I look forward to working with this committee on legislation next year. In my capacity, like yours, Representative Johnson, as chairman of the subcommittee on administrative oversight in the courts, I've chaired several hearings recently on the foreclosure crisis, most recently in late October. At that hearing, a constituent of mine, Larry Britt from Riverside, Rhode Island, told a story that is probably familiar to this committee. Larry had applied with his mortgage servicer for a mortgage modification under the Obama administration's Home Affordable Modification Program, which we call HAMP. And shepherding that request had become for Larry a nearly full-time job. Time and again, over a 19-month period, the mortgage servicer asked Larry to submit and resubmit and resubmit document after document, despite Larry having FedEx and facsimile records proving that he'd already submitted those documents. The bank consistently alleged that Larry failed to send in the necessary paperwork, and he had to do it over and over again. When he tried to clear things up over the phone, he was punted from department to department, never once during his 19 months of many calls reaching anyone who appeared to have any authority to make a decision. After 19 months of this bureaucratic nightmare, the bank finally approved Larry for a mortgage modification. The modification papers came to him via FedEx just one day after a bank representative had told him that he didn't qualify for a modification. While he's cautiously optimistic with those papers in hand, he still isn't certain that the bank won't change its mind again. Larry's story and thousands more like it get to a story of bureaucracy run amok at the very heart of the foreclosure crisis. Mortgage companies unwilling or unable to efficiently evaluate modification requests, homeowners and mortgage investors in limbo, suffering the consequences. When the paperwork runaround leads to foreclosure, a family loses its home, neighbors lose property value, communities lose tax revenue. Investors who purchase the right to the mortgage payments may lose out too. Often, the foreclosure is not necessary. I met with a group of Rhode Island realtors the other day, and every single one sitting around the table had the same story. Each one of them had had at least one short sale nailed down with a buyer and a seller, and it had the experience of a foreclosure notice appearing and interrupting the short sale. Obviously, that was the worst outcome for the homeowner. Was also a worse outcome for the investors, because the result from the foreclosure sale was worse than the outcome that had been agreed to in the short sale. In the age of securitization, the servicer merely serves as a processing agent and may not work in the interests of the people who actually own the mortgage. And in the age of corporate bureaucracy, the left hand may not know what the right hand is doing. While the program was well-intentioned, the poor performance of the HAMP has demonstrated that cash incentives alone won't get the banks to operate effectively and in good faith. A different mechanism is needed to ensure compliance. In the past, I'd focused on proposals to give bankruptcy court judges the power to reduce the principal on primary residence mortgages, the same way they can for other mortgages on vacation homes, on loans for cars and boats. While I've long believed that this is the most efficient and least costly way to keep families in their homes, and many observers agree, the large banks have fought against it with their full lobbying might. Despite House passage of cram-down legislation in March of 2009, for which I thank and applaud you, we in the Senate have been unable to overcome filibusters. Given these political realities, I decided to add to the focus of my subcommittee a different approach, already underway in several bankruptcy courts. Under programs adopted in bankruptcy courts in Rhode Island, New York, Florida, and Vermont, the court may order the homeowner and the mortgage servicer to sit down and negotiate in good faith, a settlement that is preferable to foreclosure for all parties. While judges have the ability under the programs to appoint a formal mediator if the informal talks don't work. In practice, it has not been necessary in the vast majority of cases. For most homeowners, the mere chance to speak directly with their mortgage company, with someone who has some authority, is enough to lead to a mutually beneficial agreement. Under the bankruptcy loss mitigation programs, the power of the court to compel good faith talks breaks through the bureaucratic maze of the voluntary modification programs. The court, of course, does not have the power to force a settlement, but it can force the parties to talk to each other. And that can avoid a costly foreclosure that will benefit no one. The programs in Rhode Island and the other states were designed with the input of creditors and homeowners and have been successful to date. I believe that the courts have appropriately implemented these programs under their Section 105D authority to convene pretrial status conferences. Unfortunately, one servicer has challenged the authority of the bankruptcy court in Rhode Island to require it to come in and talk to the homeowner before it forecloses on their home. I have no doubt that the court's authority will be upheld eventually, but it could be years of litigation and appeal before the parties have a final answer. In the meantime, other judges around the country may be reluctant to adopt a program facing such a challenge. I have proposed a simple legislative fix that would clarify that bankruptcy courts can run foreclosure loss mitigation programs, can make parties talk with each other before someone's home gets taken away. I hope that this committee will help me pass it into law early next year. It seems plain and non-controversial. The American people are tired of taxpayer bailouts for banks, and we owe it to them to support a sensible program that comes with zero cost to the taxpayer. Bankruptcy will not be the answer for every homeowner, but the loss mitigation programs can help homeowners like Larry cut short a stalled application process and finally get an answer to their modification request. One could even imagine that the good sense of this could cause it to propagate outside of the bankruptcy process on a voluntary basis. In Rhode Island, bankruptcy court loss mitigation has already saved 100 homes, and it has the potential to save thousands more across the country. I believe that makes it worth supporting. Once again, thank you for the opportunity to take part in this hearing, and I commend your good work. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator.